We're going to be looking at something called safety behaviours and how they maintain social anxiety. So we'll do a brief review of what we've looked at before. What are safety behaviours? Why are they even a problem? And then identifying our own. So what are safety behaviours? So if we go back to where we started that cycle, we've looked at self-image with self-focused attention, but safety behaviours also play a key role in keeping our focus internal. So behaviours are like the examples here. They're behaviours we do with the intention to keep ourselves safe and or prevent a feared outcome. Now, they often feel helpful and they often are somewhat helpful in the moment in reducing anxiety, but as we'll see, they actually maintain this cycle. Importantly, with safety behaviours, it is not what you do, but why you do it that makes it a safety behaviour or not. If you're not saying anything in a group of friends because you're listening and have nothing to say at the time, then that's not a safety behaviour. That behaviour is not fear-based. It's not trying to prevent some feared outcome. It's actually an authentic choice. But if you're in a group of friends and you fear that if you say something stupid, everyone will laugh, so you're not saying anything, then that's a safety behaviour. You're trying to prevent something from happening. Okay? So it's completely understandable why you might do that. So this is what makes them very subtle and sometimes hard to identify. Well, the problem is we never get to see our fears may not be true, and even if they were, that we could cope with them, because anxiety normally has two bits to it if we were to look at it as an equation. It's firstly predicting things that may not happen, or predicting our inability to cope with them if they did happen. So what happens, like on this graph, our anxiety rises in the situation, say I need to give a speech at work, and my safety behaviour is avoidance. So I say I have a doctor's appointment. So my anxiety does actually go down, but it's not down to where I started with. Now, I never learned that actually my fear of having a panic attack on stage was not going to happen. And even if it was, that I could maybe cope with it or other people would be accepting. So the next time it happens and I'm asked to do it, now my anxiety is even higher. So I have to do another behaviour, so I avoid again, and my anxiety goes down. But every time my nervous system learns, because I'm engaging in a safety behaviour, that this is a threat. It is a problem. The fear brain is taking in that we need to keep doing this because this is a threat to us. But the problem is our anxiety continues to grow and grow and grow in the background. And what may have started off as a minor fear or a possible fear suddenly feels very, very true. Now, secondly, we never feel authentic. So some safety behaviours aren't avoidance. They are impression management, manipulating how we come across because of fears of what would happen if we didn't. So let's say, for example, I'm around a group of people that are speaking very eloquently and very intellectually. And as you can probably see from this course, that's not how I speak. So I hide my authentic self to keep safe. You know, I put on this act of speaking like they do, mimicking how they do. They connect with that, they respond to it, but then I feel unseen and disconnected because they're connecting with something that actually isn't me. And so that reinforces my belief that I actually wouldn't be accepted as I was, because I never got the chance to see actually if I just was myself, would I have been accepted? So the next time it feels even riskier to be ourselves. And if we've been in this loop for a really long time, we may actually find it hard to even identify who our authentic self even is. Now, this is really central as well, because as humans, we want to feel like we belong. And if we feel like we belong on the basis of changing ourselves to fit whatever we think is the social norm, it's not true belonging and it won't feel the same. It's sort of a faux belonging. It's halfway there, but it's not really based on anything real about you and therefore isn't going to satisfy that need. Okay, then one of the worst bits of safety behaviours is that they can unfortunately become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So let's say you're at a work meeting with your boss and you're worried about saying something stupid, but you need to update everyone on your latest work. You're worried about coming incompetent. So as a result, your safety behaviour is you speak only when spoken to, you don't contribute unless absolutely necessary, and you don't fully update. Now, unfortunately, your boss interprets that you have nothing to say because you've not been keeping on top of your projects, which is not what's happened. But unfortunately, people can misinterpret safety behaviours, and then our behaviours are causing the very interpretation that we're trying to avoid. And this can be a really painful experience. Now, coming to where we were in our last module, it also keeps our focus internal. If we're having to control our behavior, do things, think about doing things, and then doing those things and then continuously reevaluating, we are keeping our focus internal. So that's going to make it much harder to bring your focus external and begin to reduce self-consciousness, because behaviors keep our focus internal. So as you can see, there are many, many consequences of safety behaviors in the long term, even though in the short term, they might feel helpful. So, thinking about your own safety behaviors. Now, I've put some categories of safety behaviors here. They are not an exhaustive list. I've broken it down in this way to hopefully be digestible, but you may find things that fall out of this. So avoidance is essentially physically leaving or taking steps to remove yourself from a social situation. So it's really taking away your presence. Subtle avoidance, on the other hand, is once in the situation, engaging in ways to avoid feared outcomes. Impression management is attempting to influence how others perceive us. And finally, anxiety management is trying to control your anxiety and or the perception of it by other people. Some examples here. In avoidance, we've essentially got completely avoiding different kinds of situations. In subtle avoidance, we've got over-preparing, having water nearby, going to places where speaking isn't required, for example. Impression management, not saying anything that could be considered interesting in case it's taken negatively. People-pleasing, turning your camera off if online. And anxiety management, hiding your symptoms from others, trying to stop your mouth from getting dry, sitting on your hands so people don't see them shake, all sorts of things. Now, as you can probably see, many behaviors serve multiple functions. So, for example, only being agreeable can be impression management, but it can also be a subtle safety behavior to avoid any disagreements. Or sitting on our hands to hide shaking can be anxiety management, but it can also be impression management, because what we fear people might think about us if they were to know we experienced that. So they can overlap in their intentions, and that's normal. Now, we may only have safety behaviors in very specific situations, or we might have them across the board. So use the tracker below the lesson to track your own safety behaviors. They are specific to all of us, as well as the intention and the reason behind them. So you may be able to identify the behavior, but it might take you a while to identify the reason for it. And they might be situation specific. So you may need to take some time between this module and the next module in case you don't have an opportunity to really identify your safety behaviors in situations that are particularly triggering for you. Some people can look at their life and notice them all and write them down, and other people actually need to take some time living with this knowledge and evaluating and then noting them down. So do whichever option works for you, but make sure you're really identifying what your ones are for you and what they are trying to prevent. And don't forget to practice external focus. So that skill from the last module about internal, external focus is something to keep up nonetheless. So keep practicing that, as that's also going to be reducing safety behaviors and breaking that cycle altogether. And I look forward to seeing you in the next module.